Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's session. The capabilities and limitations of AI and the development of AI into authentic intelligence. Artificial intelligence is reshaping our society and industries at an unprecedented pace. It brings enormous opportunities, boosting productivity, driving innovations in healthcare, education, and even travel, and helping address global challenges. At the same time, it poses significant risks, such as job displacement, ethical dilemmas, and the widening of inequality. In this session, we will explore both sides of AI, its potential and its limitations. And more importantly, we will discuss the concept of authentic AI because the uniquely human capabilities of empathy, ethical judgment, critical thinking, and purposeful leadership that will increasingly differentiate individuals and organizations in the AI era. It's my great honor to introduce our distinguished panelists, Professor Toby, University of New South Wales, Professor Brad Harris, HEC Paris. We are privileged to hear from both of you today. So could you introduce yourself briefly first?
Sure. Thank you for the introduction. And it's lovely to be back in Korea. I always enjoy arriving in Korea. It seems to be a young country that's 5 minutes into the future, looking to embrace the opportunities that artificial intelligence and other technologies bring. I have spent the last 40 years working in artificial intelligence, and for most of that time, it was more science fiction than science fact. But what's really exciting is in the last 5 or 6 years, how AI has turned into a commercial reality, turned into a practical reality that is turning up in so many different corners of our lives. So I'm very excited. It's the most exciting time now to be working in the field, to see the transformation that's happening, and to see the speed of transformation. I think that's the thing that surprises me most, how quickly the technology is now arriving.
Hello, everyone. Hey, look, I'm thrilled to be here. We're going to be talking about AI, of course, but also authentic intelligence, and we're going to try to weave at least part of a story around the importance of the human condition. And I think this country, this is my first time here. The country really has embodied that. I've felt welcome, I've felt warmth, I've been blessed with great questions, and I've been able to ask great questions to you all. So certainly I think this topic will resonate. Hey, look, Toby's an expert in AI. He's been studying this for a long time. Jeff's got the practical application. I guess I'm more of a traditional academic, so I'm a professor of management and human resources. I study things like team dynamics, the social process of influence or leadership, and increasingly I've been working with HR professionals to understand how technology and humans interact. And some of the things that I wrote even a few years ago already feel quite dated. How do we respond to algorithmic recommendations in hiring situations? But perhaps I have another role that I think might be useful. I hope it's useful to us in the conversation, and that's I have the grand challenge and privilege to be an associate dean of our MBA and EMBA programs, and as part of that, I'm constantly thinking about and listening to people, whether it's outside stakeholders or students or faculty. What are we going to do with AI? How do we teach this thing? What do we need to know? Where's it going? And maybe I'll lead with something that I'll probably end with. The future's still unwritten, and it's a very exciting space to be in. So I hope I can bring some value to my esteemed colleagues here in this discussion.
Sounds great. So as a CEO of the company, doing the business mostly with AI and data globally, I look forward to your insights. The first question is about impact and risks of AI. AI is reshaping industries and societies at an unprecedented pace, as I told you. In your opinion, what is the most transformative opportunity AI brings, and what is the most pressing risk we must urgently confront? Yes, you first.
Okay, great. I promised myself I would say I have no idea, Jeff, to every question. So I will give my best venture here. I am excited. I am pro AI in a lot of ways. I think AI's got the potential to democratize information, data, even communication styles in a way that can really add value. If we do this right, we have the potential to not only make our businesses more efficient, but we can really lift people out of poverty, we can cure diseases, and these are great things. I think, and we'll get to this a little bit later, I'm almost certain, I think the downsides are also evident, and it's really a problem of incentives, in my view, at least partially a problem of incentives. We've been sold all of these great things about AI, but what are we actually working on? What are the products actually doing right now? I think there's many use cases that add value. The majority of AI integrations into business are still not positive ROI. Maybe they will be. Maybe the time horizon is too short for me to make that statement or make it a conclusive statement. But I think for all the potential AI has, the downsides are that it's going to be used to make a small group of people more wealthy, to create more inequality, and this scares the dickens out of me. I'm terrified that this is the outcome. And so again, I'll make the case later that there's still very much room for human voice and agency in this process. But this is where I land on the first question. Toby, I'm really interested to hear what you have to say here.
Well, the great thing is, and we didn't confer beforehand, I have exactly the same conclusion as the downside, which is the concentration of wealth that we will see if we aren't careful, that we're already starting to see this immense value. This is the biggest gold rush in history. We have never seen wealth being generated at the rate it is being. Just to take one example, OpenAI, that is the fastest growing company in the history of capitalism. No company ever has gone from no income, which is what they had before they released ChatGPT, to 1 year later, $1 billion a year annualized revenue. Today, $4 billion annualized revenue per year. We have never seen wealth being generated, or the market capitalization. It's the most valuable private company that exists. Again, we have never seen a company go to $500 billion private capitalization ever in the history of capitalism. So immense wealth being generated, but in the hands of, at the moment, of a very few number of people. And our destiny is being decided by a small number of people, many of them not in Korea. So that's the risk. The wealth is not adequately shared. The opportunity is great. The opportunity to do things that humans couldn't even do. When people ask me, what is the best opportunity for AI, the place I always end up in is healthcare. It's going to completely transform, personalize the way we do medicine. And not just do medicine in a personal way, just like we've personalized so many of the other services we have in our lives, but do things that humans couldn't do. And if you just indulge me, I'm just going to give one little anecdote. I was reading a paper recently, some colleagues were doing something that just blew my mind away. They've taken the UK gene bank. So 500,000 people in the United Kingdom have had their gene sequence. It costs a couple of $100 to have your gene sequence. They've contributed that data to a public database with their medical data, their family history, all of their medical information. Now, that's gigabytes of data. Human eyes can make no sense of that amount of data. All the genetic sequence and all that medical history. But you can throw AI at the problem, and even simple machine learning algorithms already uncovering interesting things. So, for example, they've discovered the genetic markers for bowel cancer. Third most deadly cancer in the world, mostly preventable. If it's caught in time, you can cure most bowel cancers, but sadly, by the nature of bowel cancer, most people don't notice it before it's too late. Well, now we can tell at birth if you have the genetic markers for bowel cancer. We don't understand the mechanism, Hopefully AI will help us understand the mechanism. We don't understand the environmental triggers because genetics is not destiny. There are obviously environmental triggers that we have yet to discover. But now you can have a blood test from an early age and you can be monitored so that you don't have to die an untimely death from bowel cancer. That's something that human doctors could never have done.
Understood. We are making the growth and profitability from this new technology. So totally, I'm confident to make something from AI. But sometimes, as you mentioned, it looks like a black box. That's the problem, I think. So I would like to move to the next question about human strength versus AI. Our session introduced the concept of authentic intelligence encompassing empathy, ethical judgment, and critical thinking. Why do you believe these human qualities will become even more essential in the age of AI?
Well, I mean, one of the other challenges, we talked about inequality, but the other challenge that worries most people is the impact it's going to have on people's work. And the fact that people fear that AI is going to take their jobs. And there's good reason that people should be fearful because technologies have always taken jobs away and technologies have already created opportunities for new jobs. So what are the opportunities for the new jobs? What are the important skills of the future? And they're the ones you just mentioned. They're your emotional intelligence, your social intelligence, your creativity, your adaptability. Those are uniquely human skills. And as machines do more of the dull, routine, repetitive things that machines are excellent at to do, those are going to be increasingly the skills that we value in humans. And where the opportunities are. And if you think about it, there are just so many. I'm told the most important characteristic of a CEO is their emotional intelligence. You're a leader. You have to understand how to inspire people, how to lead them, what are the roadblocks that are stopping them from being able to perform. The most important skill of a salesperson is their emotional intelligence, to be able to read the person, understand what it is that they want. The most important skill of a politician is their emotional intelligence, to understand what the public wants and what's holding them back. The most important skill of a doctor is their emotional intelligence, to be able to communicate the diagnosis. They'll probably have an AI expert that's helping them do that diagnosis. So there's so many places where increasingly it's your emotional and social intelligence, your communication skills, your critical thinking skills that are going to be important. And those are the things that are going to keep you well employed and not being replaced by the machines.
Wow, so I have to follow this now. I think I'm on the same page here, and I think you've done a nice job of articulating some things that I've been wrestling with. And if I borrow from your other work, we talk about all of the capabilities of AI and GPTs and large language models and their ability to process data and style the communication in a way that resonates with us. And these things are very human-like. But
we're easily fooled, though.
We are easily seduced, I think.
Great man.
When I prepared for this talk, this was the previous version of ChatGPT. It told me how wonderful my ideas were. And then 3 days later, I found out, well, ChatGPT 5 doesn't do this as much. And I was really convinced that
you were one of the disappointed GPT-5 customers.
Yeah, I just switched back. And I want to be ingratiated by my AI. But look, you also mentioned that we designed this technology, and inherently, as of now, and I hope it kind of stays this way, it lacks the chemistry to feel loss, to feel love, these distinctly irrational human things that make us who we are. And I'm hopeful that this still matters. Maybe one analog I can give you that might resonate is AI has gotten very good about writing, and it comes across as compelling, confident for sure, dangerously confident. But there's something about when you engage with an author in a novel, it's not just the words on the page. It's not just the quips or the beautiful phrases. It's about connecting with that human experience. And one of the people that I grew up, I'm an American. I grew up. And I read this book by Kurt Vonnegut, Slaughterhouse-Five, and I also, throughout that book, was being taught by a great teacher about, his background. And it's a good story. It makes me laugh. It makes me sad. There's a whole lot of elements there that are really unique. But it matters not just because of what he's saying. It matters because he lived these experiences through war that he's kind of writing about, and he's telling it in a different way. And maybe I'll end on this. I'll get back to the question a little bit, Jeff. The things that add value are typically built upon resources that are rare, inimitable, can't be copied, and that are not easily substituted. And so Toby said it perfectly, as we commoditize all of these things, this ability to process data, this ability to write, this ability to do this and whatever comes next, what's going to be left? It's going to be the hard work of connecting with people, addressing a conflict, finding compromise, saying I'm sorry when you're wrong, bumbling through answers on a stage like I am now. Like, all of these things are important, I believe, and they're going to become increasingly rare if we don't keep our eye on the ball. So this is my premise on why authentic intelligence matters.
I just want to expand on that, which is there's the conceit that we think that our superpower is our intelligence, and so therefore we're threatened by artificial intelligence. But actually our superpower was our society. The fact that we come together in rooms like this, share ideas and share experiences, that was the thing that allows us to create more than we can do individually. The fact that, I mean, we used our intelligence, language and culture and all of that to build on top of those things, but it was our ability to come together as companies, as villages, as towns, as nations, to do things together that has amplified what we can do. And that's not going to go away.
It sounds interesting. I'm just reminded that during the COVID-19, we should have a conference call for the meetings only, and it looks very efficient, I felt, in the beginning. But as time goes, without any human touch, even productivity has been decreasing. This is why I think this type of the conversation looks very important, not only for kind of the quality, but for the quantity, I think.
This is why you have to get back in the office. Whether you like it or not. You miss things if you're not together with people.
Kind of. Let's move to the third question about the leadership and organizations. From your experience, how can leaders and institutions practically nurture authentic intelligence within their organizations or for themselves, especially when efficiency and automation are often prioritized? Because this is my curiosity to have your great insight.
Okay, I'll take the first crack at this one. Great question, by the way. Very difficult question, and maybe I'll only address it partially. The first and most obvious way that leaders influence this is through role modeling. They show up and they do the things. They drive clarity around what is expected of the workforce. And then I've got a colleague that's got this 4C framework. I'll go through a few of them, but clarity about the strategic priorities, but also the values of the organization. Communication, we've got to over-communicate. And then we've got to have some consequences there. And so I gave you 3 of the C's. These are the 3 most important here. But these things are the starting point. But at its core, maybe it's helpful to think about what is leadership. And Jeff, you live this every day. Toby, you're a thought leader. You've got great experiences too. But psychologically, leadership is a social process of influence. It's about getting people to do something they otherwise wouldn't have done, or to do it at a level of enthusiasm they wouldn't have done. And then I think beyond psychological definitions, leadership in organizations is something about the decision-making rights. You own the decisions. And if one element, just one element, that really drives people to pursue what we're trying to get them to work on is trust. Now, we can substitute trust in the short term. We can hedge. We can take away the upper level benefits by reducing the downsides, by enforcing contracts and things like this. But really, if we want the ultimate buy-in from our teams and our organizations, it's about trust. Trust is simply our willingness to be vulnerable to another. And how do we do that? Well, people decide they're going to trust us based on some crude, semi-rational estimation of our ability, our benevolence, and our integrity. Maybe a more practically accessible way to think about this is they make judgments about our logic. Here, AI might eventually be just as good as us, or maybe it's already there, I'm not sure. But they also make assessments about our empathy. Do we care about more than just ourselves? Can we put ourselves in someone else's shoes? And then important for this conversation, our authenticity. Do they believe that we are showing up as our true selves, or at least to some measure? I'm not completely convinced at this stage. I think we can be fooled for a short time, but I'm not convinced that the AI we currently have can engender that sort of interpersonal trust we need to drive really special outcomes. Toby, I'm super curious to hear what you have to say here.
No, I don't think we can, and I don't think we should. We should always be thinking of it as an assistant, as someone who can help us to achieve our goals. But our leaders are going to be humans like Jeff, who can inspire us, as you say, and they inspire us because, first and foremost, because of their values. There's that saying about, an organization is like a fish. It rots from the head downwards, right? So we look to our leaders for their values, and we look to them for inspiring us by the way they walk and the things that they do. I had the great pleasure to meet the CEO of Microsoft, and he's a very inspiring person. It's quite well known. He's talked about this in public. He has a profoundly disabled son. And so when he talks about ensuring that Microsoft products are available and accessible to people with disability, he's saying that from the heart. That this isn't, that this is his values. He really has those values. And as a consequence, I have a lot of respect, for example, what Microsoft does in that space. Because you can see it's his leadership that has, his values that enthuse the whole organization. It costs, Microsoft money to do that, but, that is leadership.
I felt the essence of human value will not be changed that much, according to your comments. I felt.
I think they become ever more important. Not just change. They will be the things that distinguish the good businesses, the business that survives, from those that don't.
Interesting. Even in the age of AI, human can contribute to the world more than before. Very interesting. The next question is about global inequality and the ethics. There is a growing concern that AI could widen global inequalities or create ethical dilemmas. How should policymakers and educators like you respond to ensure AI develops in a fair and inclusive way? Because we have heard and we have seen so many news with so many rich guys thanks to AI. So I think this is real concerns about the audience, I think.
Yeah, we started by saying that this was our both sharing this is our major concern, the widening inequality that we see, the concentration of wealth. I think we should look at history, right? This isn't the first time that we've gone through a major technological-driven change that changes the very nature of our economy. We've been through this multiple times. We saw this with the internet, we saw this with the Industrial Revolution. And we had similar concerns and worries back then. Let's not forget, at the beginning of the dawn of the industrial age, we were worried about the concentration of wealth. And indeed, there was, to begin with, a significant concentration of wealth. People were talking about the robber barons, the Carnegies and the Rockefellers, the owners of vast amounts of wealth. What did we do to ensure that workers weren't being exploited, that wealth wasn't being too concentrated? Well, it's worth thinking about the significant structural changes that we made to the way society worked, the way that we went about work, to ensure that all of us shared the benefits of the Industrial Revolution, and all of us did. I mean, it's easy to say, to be forgetful of the bounty that we had back then, but life expectancy here in Korea, in the United States, has pretty much doubled. We used to die in our 40s. We used to live agrarian lives out in the fields. Now we live in lives where we work in offices and factories, and we live to our 80s. And we live, compared to people back in the 18th century, like kings and queens, in terms of the bounties, the technologies, the quality of life we have has been transformative. But we also did a lot to ensure that we got the benefits, not just the Rockefellers and the robber barons. We introduced universal education, so people could get an education and were skilled for those new jobs. We introduced a welfare state in most countries, so that when people were unemployed, they had something to fall back on. We introduced universal pensions in most countries so that people could retire at the end of a working life. We introduced unions and labor laws and credit unions and lots of things to ensure that workers had bargaining rights and workers got to share some of the profits, that they weren't owned just by the owners of the factories. So we did a lot of changes to support people. We taxed rich people. We redistributed some of the money. We did a lot of things, quite significant structural things. And I think what we need today is to think equally ambitiously. And this is where we need politicians and thinkers to step up and help us think ambitiously, think boldly about this is a technology that's going to transform the very nature of almost everyone's work. How do we ensure that the wealth then is spread well, that it lifts the quality of all of our lives? It's not an easy problem, and the challenge is that we don't have a lot of time. The Industrial Revolution took 50 years to happen. We don't have 50 years. This is happening overnight.
Yeah, how do you think of the inequality between countries?
That's a great question as well. A question that's not often asked enough, which is we also may see not only a growing inequality within countries, but a growing inequality between countries. And I do worry, for example, the global south, the developing nations may be left behind, that we had the benefits of industrialization and the carbon economy that has polluted our atmosphere, and those countries which haven't been developed will be left behind, and we will have another period of perhaps colonization, digital colonization, in which we exploit their labor force and their data and everything else, just as we exploited their land and their minerals in the first wave of colonization. So that's something we have to worry about, because we don't want a world in which those inequities widen, because that will be a very dangerous world. It's for our own benefit to ensure that those inequities don't widen further, because it's already a pretty dangerous world. It will be an even more dangerous world if we don't address those problems.
Really, really insightful response and great question, great follow-up too. When I think about this question of how do we mitigate or solve the problem of growing inequality, there's a couple of different ways we could take it. And this is a not exhaustive list, but I think one of it is, just to be colloquial, you mentioned when you led into the question, we've got some rich guys. And I'm a Texan, I say guys to everyone. It's gender neutral to me, but I think it's telling. Well, you've got 3 guys on the panel here, but you got 3 guys, more than 3, but you've got a bunch of males running the show. But it goes beyond just the difference in sexes. It goes to some of the things you were talking about earlier, people with special needs, people from different parts of the world. We need to have representation, I think, is one maybe precondition of a safeguard that we can have against this. Do we have enough voices in the room when we're making decisions? I think maybe the more general theme that Toby's talking about, and I really agree with you, is we don't have a lot of time. It's moving so fast, and we need some guardrails in place. And Jeff, you're living in industry, and I think one of the things that, I don't know how you would say it out loud, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're almost looking for some guidance. Like, where is the line? Help me. Give me some rules. They may slow things down, but give me some guidance here. And my question is, who's got the guts? Who's got the boldness and the ambition to put the guardrails in place? In my home country, currently the majority thinks this is not a popular position to regulate anything related to AI. I mean, there's a lot of energy around the counterpoint there, but the dominant party says no, no. And I'm still very much a believer that, you know, market-driven societies are maybe the least bad option we have in some ways, but we got to have something. We've got to make sure we're distributing some of this wealth in a way that makes sense and allows humans to thrive. Is it going to be religious institutions if it's not government? Is it just going to be cultural or human values that hold us together that make the difference? I don't know, but it's something I'm worried about, and it's something when I think about how we design even just the small slice of business school education that I'm a part of. Are we training people to take up this mantle? And Toby, you talked about the Microsoft executive a second ago. I need to take maybe 2 minutes here to share maybe why I feel some conviction around this topic too. I've got 3 kids, and I've got 2 boys. I love them dearly. They're amazing people. They're going to have to live with the consequences of whatever we're deciding right now, or whatever we're not deciding right now. I'm cautiously optimistic. I worry, but I'm cautiously optimistic they'll figure it out. But I said I have 3 kids. I've got a daughter, 10 years old, that has an extremely rare genetic condition. Lots of intellectual delays and challenges, and lots of physical challenges. And so she looks different from us. She moves through the world differently, and she has to have different resources to thrive. And right now, we're lucky. Her mom and I, we can help out. We can pick up the slack. We have the resource to do it. We've got the time to do it. And we're blessed that we've got a school in Paris that can help us with this. But who's looking out for her? I can almost assure you there's no spreadsheet that will demonstrate some positive net present value of a project of helping a kid that has a 1 in 100,000 condition. And that scares me. And I don't think it's just about doing the right thing. And here, this is the least confident part of my talk. I don't think it's just about doing the right thing and taking care of the least of these. I think there's real value in people like my daughter. She certainly brings me joy. She sees the world different. She gives me perspective. She tries to talk. She's nonverbal, but she makes noises, and she tries to hug everybody on the Paris metro. The French are notoriously not into the American style of extroversion and excitedness, but she brings joy to the world around her. And I don't want her to get left behind as a baseline, but I don't want these things that are something close to magic or spiritual to be lost because we get too focused on just driving productivity or efficiency and these sorts of things. So I guess the question really is a good one. Who picks up the mantle and says, this is the rules of the game, or these are the lines we won't cross? I love the question, Jeff.
Can I ask one question? I mean, it was a wonderful story. But we began by talking about the growing inequality within our world. And neither of us have talked about the elephant, which is tax. I mean, the simplest solution to growing inequality is to tax the rich. Why is it that tech companies pay an average rate of tax much less than conventional companies when they're actually more able to pay tax? So,
why are you looking at me for this question?
Well, you're on the business school. I just think we perhaps should mention the obvious elephant, which is they have the privilege of working in these wonderful markets. They make immense. There are no businesses that make such spectacular returns on turnover that are legal, other than these businesses. I think we have to address the issue, which is why have they somehow decided that paying tax was something that only regular companies do and not them?
The short answer is I don't know. And I think many wealthy people would acknowledge that, yes, we can afford to pay a little bit more tax. I will acknowledge, though, there's a counter argument and something in my home country, and especially my home state of Texas, that we've convinced ourselves that, no, if we don't have any taxes, it will just propel growth and we'll all win and we never have to pay for roads or schools because we'll figure it out through some other way. But I do think we're going to have to be intentional and systematic, and we're going to have to think, here I'm clearly stepping out of my lanes from management professor into accounting and finance. We're going to have to find some way to acknowledge that these excessive market caps matter. Because right now you can use investments and other outlays to hide your profits and to mask things while you're paying billions, or in Elon's case, potentially trillions to a chief executive officer, but your tax rate, your nominal tax rate, is almost zero. And this doesn't feel right. It doesn't pass the sniff test, I don't think.
And it's hard also not to look to, for example, Scandinavian countries and look at the wonderful social security systems, high rates of tax they have, social cohesion, and happiness.
Yeah.
That those often measures of happiness are often very high in those nations, and not to think maybe those are models that we should be thinking more about when we're trying to think about how do we adjust our society to deal with the challenges of AI. There are choices that we're going to make, and those choices will determine what sort of society it is that we have.
Maybe this is where Jeff's prior follow-up question around the global nature of all this matters too, because right now companies are competing with one another about who can drive the most investment the fastest, and I don't know, this obfuscates the game even more, in my opinion. Jeff, do you have a clear answer for the audience here?
As a moderator, I would like to end up this question, but
Okay.
as the technology has evolved, we are sure that the total size of pie has been increasing as well. But the problem is that we are fairly allocating the pie, or we are balancing the share of the pie by country, by people. Nobody cannot trust anybody, I think. So without any rule maker or right policy maker globally, probably we may have a big conflict, and probably it's very big issue for all of us in the era of AI, I believe. Anyway, let's move to the next question, because this question looks tough. So I look forward to the answers. Looking ahead, where do you think the line should be drawn between what AI can do and what humans must continue to do? How do we sustain a healthy balance between the technological progress and human-centered values? I would like to have a clear line between this. Then definitely, this is a very great insight for us.
Okay, I'll try and draw a very clean line. And it's driven by a very simple moral, legal observation, which is AI is a technology like other technologies. There's really no magic in it. There's only one unique new characteristic that AI brings that other technologies have not brought before, and that is it has a certain autonomy, a certain agency to be able to go off and do things with minimal or even possibly no human oversight. That is something unique. We've never had machines before that go off and do things without our guidance. And that creates ethical challenges. The ethical challenge is what happens when things go wrong and the machine does something which we didn't intend. Someone might be harmed, someone might even be killed. That is a challenging moral, ethical conundrum, because our legal system, our moral system, is built around the accountability of humans. Only every legal system in the world holds humans accountable. We occasionally hold corporations accountable. That's not a very good idea. But humans are at the center of legal systems. It's humans that get punished. It's humans that are morally culpable for their actions, not machines. And so that's the one place where we have to draw a line, which is we need to maintain meaningful human oversight over machines where the machines might have disastrous consequences. So that's why there's an interesting moral debate, illegal debate around autonomous cars, self-driving cars, because sometimes self-driving cars may accidentally kill people, and who are we going to hold accountable for those deaths? That's why there's an interesting moral, ethical debate around autonomous warfare, around AI and warfare, because literally we're building machines to kill people, and what happens when they're the wrong people, what happens when they're innocent bystanders, civilians that killed in the course of that conflict.
But if we have a AGI, or more than that, like a ASI,
but again,
is it possible to control them?
No, again, where the decisions have consequence, so I talked about two areas where the decisions have consequence, but there are other places where the state is deciding, what welfare payments you should get or whether you should be given a visa. You need to maintain meaningful human oversight over those decisions. That doesn't mean we don't use AI. Of course, AI is going to be a wonderful tool to help speed up more efficiently, more effectively, more correctly make those decisions. But it's a human who has to sign off on those decisions. There are plentiful places, though, where the consequences are modest. Indeed, the greatest consequence is the cost of getting humans to do those mundane things. And that if we can replace humans from doing those mundane things, we have saved the harm to those humans who had to do those mundane things. There we should celebrate AI taking on, having full autonomy to make those decisions because the consequences are modest, and indeed, the consequence is that we've removed humans from doing things that humans should never have been forced to have to do.
I really appreciate the discussion around the chain of accountability, and once we lose sight of this, we might be over the line. I think I fall somewhere. The analogy of self-driving cars is immediately where my head goes. Do we have the information we need to hold someone accountability for whatever code went into the car to decide to hit another car or veer into the pedestrians? I'm on board with this. I think you've said some other things. I want to give you credit here and an opportunity to respond, but you've also said some other things that are maybe more philosophical around when we stop amplifying and we start eroding the human potential. This might be an indicator that we're over the line. Look, I don't know if we're at how close we are to the line. I've been a little bit negative and pessimistic in my comments here, but I think we have room to run with AI, and certainly we as professionals, but also people like my daughter, have a lot more benefits that are still within reach here. I guess the question you're asking is, how do we know, will we see the cliff? Will we see when the frontier is ending and we're crossing over to something else? And maybe I'll go with a more folksy response and totally disregard your plea for a clear black and white line. I think when we stop to see the value in a handwritten note to someone, or we decide it's just not worth it to sit with someone who's just gone through something painful, I think maybe this is not just AI specific. I think that's our clue that we've gone too far and we need to recalibrate. Jeff, you've been really deftly avoiding responding to things, but this is not going to fly. You've been to some of the best schools in the world. You've worked at some of the best companies in the world, including your current one. What do you think? I told him I was going to ask this earlier, so he should have been ready.
Actually, we have only 5 minutes, but when studying your studies, I'm curious about this question because you have studied about the killing robot. So we have an office in the Tel Aviv, and my guys are going there, and yesterday we had another kind of attack to the Qatar from the Israel, for example. In that case, I'm thinking, what's the war? Because after having an AI, probably we may not have a war like now. So after having your studies, it looks very curious to me, but due to the limited time, I would like to quickly close the session, and I would like to have the last comments. So today's discussion has reminded us that while AI holds immense promise, it also carries serious responsibilities. The key takeaway is clear. no matter how powerful AI becomes, authentic intelligence will remain our true differentiator. So in that sense, I'm very happy to hear that human can contribute more than before having AI. Before we close, I would like to ask each of our professors in the AI groups for one final thought. So you can spend around 1 to 2 minutes for your last comments.
I'll be quick and then I'll cede the floor to you. So prepare something profound. Hey, look, I struggle as a scholar. I think it's a classic scholar's dilemma at some point in your academic career of, normative versus descriptive views of the world. There's what I want to be true, and then there's what probably will be true. My current belief right now is AI is, and this is a firm belief, AI is going to change the world. It will change the world. It's already changing the world. But I do believe there's a place for humans in this revolution too, and I think there's a responsibility there too. And so maybe I'll leave you with this. I hope there's leaders in the room that don't shy away from this grand challenge and really embrace that challenge. Final word, Toby.
So I'm going to steal my final word from a great humanist called Neil Postman. He wrote a wonderful essay. I encourage you to read the essay. You can find it online. It's called 5 Lessons About Technological Change. And I'm just going to leave you with one of those lessons. The lesson which is, for every technology, ask what it gives you, but also ask what it takes away. Every technology gives you some gift, but in doing so, it takes something away. So as an example, a concrete example, when we invented GPS navigation systems, when we used navigation on our phone, we got the gift of never being lost. But we lost something. We lost the fact, there's plentiful psychological studies which show that if you follow the navigation system, you never learn your neighborhood. You never know where you are, you're just following directions. And that physically changes your brain. They've actually done studies, they show that the hippocampus, the part of the brain at the top where you have your spatial memory, actually shrinks if you don't use it. And so with every technology, and this is the thing that worries me, and it goes back to the previous question about drawing the line, which is, I drew a legal line, a moral line, but we should draw the human line, which is remembering that when we outsource things to machines, that's a convenience. That may make our life better, more efficient, but always think about what we're giving up in doing that. What are we giving up about ourselves?
I have nothing more to add. I should have ChatGPT'd a better conclusion. Hey, look, there's room for there's room for leaders. Let me just echo what I said before. You're right. The cycles, I'll steal from you again, and I'll round out our last 20 seconds or so. The cycles aren't always what we think. Sometimes we overestimate the impact in the short term and we underestimate the long-term impact, and I think we need to pay attention to that. There's a lot of hype now, but really 5 years, 10 years, I'm not sure what the horizon is, but our world's going to look different, and we need to be paying attention.
I agree.
Thank you. So Professor Walsh and Harris, I'm very happy to have you here. And your insight looks very helpful for us to understand how to manage AI. Regardless of capability of AI, probably you'd like to be human, not AI, because human is better than AI. So in that sense, thank you for sharing your great insight. And again, thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.